Without an understanding of the purpose or of an item or the purpose of a person in our lives, we are destined to abuse that item or that purpose. Well, that is the beginning, Barry. I think we've got a lot of places we can go today. What you think?
I feel abused and taken for granted.
Well, if we were sitting down in a counseling session, I'd look at you and say, "Get over it."
Get over it, Buttercup. I get it.
That's right. That's right.
I've heard that line a few times.
Yeah, let me illustrate this, Barry. I've got a shofar here that was made by Yaakov Rice, dear friend in California. This is a blessed buck shofar, a small one. It has quite a powerful sound to it. But if I don't understand the purpose of this shofar, what can I do with this? Well, I could use it as a hammer to try to drive a nail, and that probably is not going to work out very well in the end. I can go out and use it as a pry bar. I could come up with a number of different things, and in the end, what would I do? I would abuse this, never finding the true purpose and never finding the true blessing of the item.
Okay.
So, if that's true with something like this, can that also not be true of the people that are in our lives? That if we don't understand the purpose of friendships, of relationships, of biblical, I don't want to say authority, but what's the word I'm trying to find here? Orders. What was that?
Leaders.
Okay. Order. Go back to you have a brother that was in the military. I was there. Many of our listeners have been in the military. If you don't understand the order that is there in ranks, you'll end up abusing that in various ways. So that takes us to a subject that we talked about, we approached last week, the subject of shepherds and sheep, the subject of pastors and those that are a part of a congregation. Barry, let's consider something in this week as we go into it. I'm asking myself a question. I've been asking myself a question for about a week now. Do I really understand? And this is from someone who's been in a pastoral role for almost 30 years. How did I get that old? I don't know, but almost 30 years ago, it was 28 years ago that I started pastoring. I had no clue what that word really meant. It was like, on the job training, but I'm 28 years after, I'm asking myself, do I really understand what that role is? Now, you've been pastoring longer than I had, so maybe could you explain this to me?
There's a lot of different answers that are running through my head. There's a cultural understanding of what a pastor or shepherd is. He's the guy or the lady, in some cases, who does all of your preaching, your marrying, your burying, officiating of official religious ordinances.
Yeah, they're there to perform the wedding. They're there to dedicate the children, to baptize, and then to bury.
Right.
Wow. I mean, what a great thing.
Well, if you look at some ordination certificates, it actually lists those functions. You have state recognized authority to perform these particular functions and an officiant role.
Mm-hmm.
Some folks would say, well, he's supposed to be my friend. my religious friend, my spiritual advisor. He's the one that does all of the visiting in behalf of the local congregation. Mm-hmm. In some ways, he is the figurehead of the local congregation, in that he's the person that bears the identity, the chief identity and chief responsibilities of all that we do. In some congregations and systems, he's a very glorified individual, second only to Yeshua the Messiah. And it's our job to make sure that he drives in style, dresses in style, lives well, eats well. Because if he's blessed, then I have a chance to be blessed, because all of my blessing, and I've heard this preached, all of the blessing to the individuals in the congregation are funneled through the pastor. So the more blessed and exalted the pastor is, the more is being funneled through him to everyone else. I can't get it if he doesn't have it first.
Okay, for all of you that are listening from House of David or Life Assembly, rewind that and go back over it and listen to it 2 or 3 more times. No,
2 or 3 more times. But, you know, in most circles, no matter how much we try to spiritualize the identity and hold it to Scripture of a pastor, it's very hard for that function and role not to be religious in its connotation and practice.
Okay.
Scripture, he's the shepherd, the one who he provides the hands-on scriptural nurturing of the individual at whatever level it is that they're in need of. Whether they are a newborn lamb or an elder sheep in the flock, he has to recognize what level of input, influence, and leadership does each individual in the congregation need.
Okay. So let's take this into a modern day. I was just with a man that's become a friend of mine. He was a pretty famous college football coach for a number of years.
Uh-huh.
And, you played some sports in school. I did not. I had a PE teacher, and that was, that was as close as
that one. I'm sorry.
That was as close to sports that I got. I did have a little bit of an opportunity when we were in Arizona to. Daniel was actually playing baseball as I think he was 8, 9 years old, and so I got to help out in coaching that. How close do people look at a modern day pastor in terms of, well, they're kind of like my coach was in high school or college? Is that maybe not a stated comparison, but something that's kind of rolling around and it's like, okay, well, they're the coach.
I think the term life coach is widely used, and sometimes the coach aspect of a pastor, where he stands up on a Shabbat afternoon, morning, or whether he's a Sunday morning pulpit guy, and it's probably about the message. A shepherd is going to give you scriptural understanding, reproof, rebuke at times, encouragement at others, insights at others. A coach is going to explain the X's and O's on the board.
Okay.
Here's how we win. And if a pastor is constantly teaching his congregation, here's how you win at life. This is how you win at marriage. This is how you are successful. This is how you increase your return of your investments. Then we're talking about a life coach situation more than anything else, where someone is trying to improve the elements of your daily living without improving the inward being.
Okay. I like that thought process. Let's come
Well,
back
my
to
accomplishment
that.
is done then. I'm done.
Okay. Yeah. We're done. It's been nice. We'll see you next week. And I'll try to come up with something else for you to be famous for. Okay. So let's come back to that in just a moment. Let's go to a different aspect of this coach pastor thing. That for the most part in church settings, the pastor has been, as you have said, the person that does the preaching on Saturday or Sunday, the marrying and burying, and all the things that are in the midst of it. They're the ones that are called to go to the hospital, to visit the all the people of the congregation, make sure that everybody's feeling good. Whereas on the coach, if a coach gets out on the field and starts doing the job of the players, isn't that called a penalty?
Yeah.
So if someone is looking at their pastor kind of in a coaching aspect, then is it that they haven't figured out who they are yet too? So has the whole thing kind of been mixed up? I drive around and I see large churches, and they're called campuses now.
Yeah,
it's no longer a church, and it's a campus. And so, kind of adopting the aspect of the college campus, and this is where you come to get your academic. See, Barry, as we start to pull these things apart and start to see, I think that the kahal, which is the assembly, the congregation, wrongly termed church in the end, is probably has been going through a great identity crisis. And because congregations, I use that word because I don't like the word church, because congregations have had an identity crisis, not understanding the purpose of a pastor, not understanding the purpose of an evangelist, an apostle, a prophet, a teacher, not understanding the very purpose of the people that are attending that congregation together, not understanding the purpose of the buildings, all of those things. Because the purpose is not understood, there is an identity crisis which has made the system, I'll go there, made the system irrelevant to society in most aspects. I'll tell you how irrelevant modern day religious, and I'm not just going to go to Christianity, but I'll tell you how irrelevant much of religion is today. Just as you can tell what society is by going to the Walmart and watching people in the parking lot.
Oh, Father.
Yeah. Drive around sometime and read church signs.
Yeah.
And ask yourself a question. If I had not grown up with Sunday school, with Vacation Bible School, if I had never opened a Bible, a scripture for myself and read it, would I have a clue what these people are talking about? Give you 2 examples, 3 examples. Number 1, I have a picture on my phone of this one. It said this was a church in Oklahoma. Bring your marshmallows, our pastor's on fire. Okay. Number 2, God is like bounty. He's the quicker picker-upper. Okay. Number 3, and this is one now. This is one that you can see around in North Carolina right now. Jesus is like fall, but he never leaves, or something similar to that. I can't remember exactly. Explain how relevant that is to me. And in doing so, I think that it's an identity crisis of not understanding really the purpose of anybody within the doors. Am I making any sense, Barry?
Yeah, on the marquee thing, it's been basically a quick phrase to entice somebody to actually come by and stop in on a Sunday morning or Saturday, if that matters.
Yeah, sign broken, come inside for message.
What's CH blank blank U CH? What's
yes.
you are?
Yeah. What's missing? You are.
Anyway, a couple of thoughts here, Mike. I believe that what is outlined for us in the text of the scriptures and the functioning roles of the body of Messiah, the fivefold ministry gifts, the way that Moshe was encouraged, you need to select judges to work with you, appoint elders of the congregation, the delegation of responsibilities to capable people, recognizing people's gifting and putting them in a place where they can function in that gift, making room for gifts in people's lives, keeping Yeshua as the head of the local body, preaching and teaching sound doctrine, facilitating meaningful worship and exaltation of our King. These are timeless. They always work.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, we are not locked down to methodologies. Gregorian chants don't necessarily work well in modern applications. Singing hymns by a pipe organ that fills the entire front of the local church, and I've seen those.
Oh yeah.
Somebody romp down on one of those things and they'll throw you out of your seat. There has to be some cultural application to some degree. But the idea that we have to change the function of the local congregation to suit modern expectations in order to draw a crowd is misguided. When it gets us away from the biblical model of what has been laid out for us, and we have to reinvent. Some number of years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I met a young couple that came to Gloucester for the intent purpose of assisting a startup congregation. And they began meeting in the local movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
And then they moved to the Moose Lodge. They rented the Moose Lodge for a while. And then they ended up at a building, and then a church basically died. Its congregation fell apart and it died, and the elders of that local church building gave the building to this functioning church. Mm. But that young couple came with that purpose in mind, and what they were proposing as graduates of one of the major Baptist universities in America was the postmodern church.
Hmm.
And in their understanding, postmodern church meant current worship tunes from off the radio, dressed down, no suits, no ties, no dress up at all. So if you got holes in your jeans and a ratty T-shirt on to lead worship, that's acceptable.
Yeah, that's actually not only is it acceptable. That's kind of that's that's what's looked at as, wow, they're cool.
They're cool. So message light, gospel light, fluff and puff doctrine. That's what my term. Preach fluff and puff.
All right, I like it.
I know you're going to steal it and use it, but that's fine. You heard it here first, folks. Preach Sunday morning fluff and puff. And if you want any meat at all, then it's small groups in the middle of the week in someone's living room. That's the postmodern church as it was explained to me, and it may have changed a few times in the last 10 years. There is a local congregation not far from here, similarly styled. They are known for their stage show on Sunday morning for worship. And if you want them, they have earplugs available as you go in. And it's set up arena style. And the music is loud, like a concert venue. And then the cool dude pastor comes up and offers, again, gospel light, not to offend anyone. And, small groups is the backbone of the congregation. I understand what they're doing. They're saying the American audience has changed, and if the church is wooden pew, shotgun style layout, pastor in a tie, they don't feel like that they can relate. He doesn't understand where I'm living. So what if Paul met Messiah on the Damascus Road? What is that really saying to me? Well, I get it. Sometimes our sermons are only impressive to ourselves. I've stood and
I've preached that message.
I've done that a few times where I thought, don't you get it? I'm waiting for the wow factor to hit in, and people going, that don't make any sense to me. Yeah. So I've been there and we've done that. Two things. Whoever is presenting the word, whether it's in worship or whether it's in a teaching, preaching format, midrash format, the goal has to be twofold. One, to elevate and glorify our Messiah and our King. Number two, to elevate and encourage, edify those who are the listeners. That when they leave, that they got something to chew on, something to focus on, and something that's going to enable them to grow and mature spiritually. The one who is presented this has to be available during the course of the week to encourage and edify, and sometimes you guys sit alongside of and explain and help them to chew better instead of spitting it out, put that back in your mouth. And I know it's got a bitter taste, but it's good for you, that type of mentality. My concern is this, Mike. I would say that the vast majority of our listeners have come out of traditional denominational system oriented congregational life. They ask the question, is this all there is? They followed that question till they came to some variation of where you and I are walking now. And it's a lot of variations. There is an understanding of the system failed us because it focused on the system more than on the truth. And so we came out hungry for truth. We also recognize that the system, more than just the doctrine, it was the system and the way it was oriented. Its design and its function was not always a scriptural design and function. That it could be more of, and I found this to be true in the denomination that I came out of. A lot of positives, a lot of great people. But I have to tell you that there was a lot of preachers that were looking for their most advantageous location with the best pay and benefits and the most opportunity to have a larger church than where they're at. And they're promoting their pastoral careers, not mean-spirited, nothing wrong with that per se in the function of the denomination. No one can blame them for wanting to move up and have a better opportunity. I had a problem with that. I just couldn't do that. I couldn't be professional clergy. It just bugged me.
Oh yeah, that one. Watching that of kind of like the politician, the person that runs for city clerk is running for city clerk so they may become mayor.
Yeah. Well, here's my issue, Mike. There is currently a trend among some in the Hebrew roots community to readopt church principles or church stylings and promotion efforts to better do what we do because it draws a bigger crowd, or they're upset with what has been. And I get it. Hebrew roots community has been dysfunctional and problematic. I get that. But straying from the model in here to better program what we are wanting to do is a mistake. It's a mistake.
So I guess you've kind of come to my issue here that is where I'm at this moment in time. I just finished this morning reading through. I've been going through Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. Train wreck after train wreck after train wreck. The wheels fell off the bus and people had a tire fire. I mean, it was, craziness along the way. The number of times that you see in scripture, especially in Kings, the number of times that you see, and this king did what was right in the sight of Yah, is like minute. It's like, how evil can they be? It's like this one is the most evil until this one, who is now superseded by this one, who figured out new ways to do evil. It's train wreck, train wreck, train wreck. I was trying to figure out where to start reading tomorrow morning, and I had an idea, but I mean it's been solidified to me today in talking to you. I'm going to the Book of Acts tomorrow, and I'm going to start reading through the Book of Acts, because it's not a train wreck. It's the style of doing things the right way. I am reminded of the words of Dick Rubin years ago, who said, "When the pattern is right, the glory will fall." You and I have talked about the glory falling, since we've known each other. Okay,
mm-hmm.
Is what we're trying to do in kind of stumbling through this program today and all of our thoughts. It's a desire to get the pattern right. And for those that want to go back and readopt and kind of reinvent the church system and all of that stuff, remember what happened to Kmart when they reinvented themselves. They became Big K. What'd they do? In becoming Big K, the only thing that changed was the sign outside. They didn't change the stuff inside. They changed the sign outside. And now they're bankrupt. I don't want to change. We've gone from Jewish roots to Hebrew roots to Messianic to I'm tired, Barry. I'm tired of changing the sign. I don't want to change the sign anymore. I'm not looking for a new marquee. I believe that if we maybe not change, but if we figure out the pattern, his pattern for what's happening inside, we won't need a sign to attract people.
Mike, when I came out of the local church that I was pastoring, I took on a marquee change for myself.
Mm-hmm.
When I came to that local congregation, they started off, well, Preacher Phillips or Brother Phillips. I said, just call me pastor. That's what I want to be to you. I want to be your pastor. To say, hey, pastor. And so for the years that I was there, that was pretty much my identity. I was pastor. Pastor Phillips, Pastor Barry, or just pastor. And to me, it was an honor to fill that role. When I came out, I had this angst and anger and issue with anything church.
Mm-hmm.
That was just the way we came out, 2002. So when someone at House of David that we started a month after we came out called me pastor, I cringed. Because to me, that just smacked of church identity roles. And it was a church thing. So they said, well, what do we call you? And I said, my name is Barry. Just call me Barry.
Just Barry.
That's all I need. And it was an effort to say, I'm no one super special here. I don't need the church role promotional identity. I'm the same as you. I just happen to be a guy up front. After a number of years, people took on actually within less than a year, that they took on the Jewish identity of things, and they started hollering rabbi. Well, I was never comfortable with that, although I understand rabbi simply means teacher.
Yeah.
And that's what I was doing. So it's a title that's on my ordination certificate as a teacher of Torah. It is a rabbinical or rabbi style role. Okay, whatever. It's impressive when someone asks for an official letter or something other. I can say Barry Phillips, rabbi of, House of David, whatever.
Yeah, and that at about $5 will get you a Starbucks coffee, and if you like Starbucks coffee.
I wouldn't even go into the place, but nevertheless.
Yeah.
In the last couple of years, I've recognized, Barry, your function has not changed.
Mm-hmm.
You are a shepherd and a pastor of this local congregation. And you don't do it with the ecclesiastical church system identity, but it's a biblical role. There is a biblical role of a pastor, a shepherd. And that's what you're fulfilling. And if someone references you as a pastor, it's not a negative thing, it's an honorable thing. So if I can encourage someone in their walk, if I can break down the meal that I offer and cut it up in pieces so that a lamb can chew it better.
Mm-hmm.
If I can explain the reason why the meal is arranged as it is, why are we in this particular field and pasture when we would prefer to be over there? Well, this one is necessary because we're focusing here because. Another thing, sheep reproduce sheep. It's a weird thing if a pastor gives birth to a sheep.
Yeah, it is. It's just not supposed to be that way.
Well, I mean, there's nothing to say that I can't encounter someone,
yes,
and lead them to Messiah, and I should be able to do that. But
if the sheep are just looking at you as the vehicle for the multiplication or addition of the congregation, then the roles are not defined. And that's what we're trying to figure out here in this. And I know that this is maybe a very little tedious in what we're going through today, but it's about getting the roles right. Go ahead.
Well, The most exciting thing I think that can happen to a local congregation is that when sheep are reproducing sheep, the joy of new lambs in the congregation is an exciting and invigorating thing.
Oh yeah.
My understanding is it doesn't take place so much in the local building, living room, basement, gathering spot as it does out in the real world of where you live and function. But I'm not. I agree with you that a life coach, there's nothing to say that we don't need coaches. We do. There is a function and a role for someone to be your encourager, someone to give you some nuts and bolts and understanding of some things. And here's how you become successful. I've got books on the shelf here that are more business oriented. But the local congregation, whether it's a church or a Hebrew Roots congregation or however it is designed and put together, it's not business. And I was a part of the introducing of business functions, models, and techniques to grow your local church. In the mid to late 90s, I went through years of training how to grow your local church. And it was about applying business models. You have to have a vision statement. You have to have a mission statement. You have to develop your leadership team. And so the pastor became the coach and the team leader. He's the lead pastor. We're adopting business model titles to try to better understand how to administrate our local church or our local congregation. I'm not saying that, Mike, that can't help in some understanding. Some pastors are good in as far as the words that they say, but they're not good at administration. I'm better at speaking than I am administrating, but I also recognize that if they're good administrators, let them administrate. Let them function in their gift.
No doubt. But see, once again, and we need to wrap up here, but once again, the churches, congregations, what you're describing again is a lack of biblical identity of the roles and functions of the people. And when you do not have the correct biblical purposes and identities of the people that make up this family, whatever, okay, you end up having to adopt from other places. So you end up with coach and player, life coach, CEOs, CFOs, COOs, C somethings, because nobody's seeing. And so here's our purpose this week, is going through this time to simply say, are we willing to take a challenge of not being identified from outside sources, but let's go back to this book, try to find our identity for our functions, our purposes as a people, so that we can affect more people. And that may not be the rah-rah moment, because sometimes just trying to figure out who you are is not, it's not what it doesn't give you the warm fuzzies and stuff. But I'm not looking for warm fuzzies today. Or what was that, Fluff and Puff?
Yeah, Fluff and Puff.
Yeah, I'm looking for something that's foundational, which is the title of our program. I'm looking for something that has substance to it. And I think we can find it in these pages.
Well, folks, we appreciate very much your patience to listen through to the end of this. A couple of things here. One, if you are so desirous, please share on your local social media pages, your personal pages. And if you would like to correspond, you can leave a message at the end of the video, or you can reach Mike Clayton at joinedtohashem.org, or you can reach me by going to Remnant of Israel, YISRAEL, remnantofisrael.com. We very much would like to hear your opinions and your responses, in particular, to this particular edition of Foundations for Life. Thank you again for watching. I'll be away next week. Mike, I think you'll be here next week with.
Yes.
And so I'm going to be at Sukkot. Yes, I know I'm 30 days late, but we're a little different this year, and that's, pray you give us enough grace to do that. But I'll be away for Sukkot next week. So until next week, Mike would say, Shalom.
All right. See you then.
Okay. Bye-bye.